Taliban rule has had a devastating impact on Afghan women and girls. Afghan women and girls are facing both the collapse of their rights and dreams and risks of their basic survival. Taliban are dictating what women must wear, how they should travel, workplace segregation, and even what kind of cell phones women should have. They enforce these rules through intimidation and inspections. Take a look.
A popular private TV news channel in Kabul aired an all-female panel in its studio with an audience of women to mark International Women's Day. This was an incredibly rare broadcast, as since the Taliban took over, many female journalists were forced out of the profession. Last year, the Taliban banned most girls and women from attending high schools, universities, and from working for any NGOs. According to the International Labour Organization, the growing restrictions imposed by the Taliban, coupled with the country's severe economic crisis, led to a 25% drop in female employment last year. More and more women are now turning to self-employment, such as tailoring at home.
ولی آیا ښځه داسې نه ده ښځه حق لري د اسلام له نګاه همدارنګه د قانون له نګاه نه همدارنګه په ټولنه کې دا د دې یو حق دی چې هغه باید وکولی شي کار وکړي کسب وکړي تعلیم وکړي.
International organizations such as the UN Refugee Agency, along with local charities, are providing healthcare training to Afghan women in order to save lives of mothers and babies in remote parts of the country. 40 young women from villages in the Bamyan province are enrolled in the 2-year training program, which started in April of 2022 at a hospital in the provincial capital. Afghanistan has the highest maternal mortality rate in Asia. The United Nations estimates that an Afghan woman dies every 2 hours during pregnancy and childbirth. Rahimi, for example, who has 5 other children, was bleeding and was in intense pain as she slowly made her way to her in-laws' house. Her husband was unable to find a car to bring her to the hospital, much less an ambulance, and riding a donkey was out of question. Rahimi's baby died shortly after it was born, and before an ambulance finally arrived.
خانم خیلی بلنده یک 2 ساعت یک و نیم ساعت راه می در پیاده تا اون مزنج دیگه رای موتر نداشت تا خیز خیز که آمادم خیز شوهر خو باز اینم در خانه می خسور خمادم همینج که آمادم تا یه بیچارگو سو خیز خیزه کد که یک موتر پیدا کنی آمبولانس زنگ ده دمیزیاگل زنگ زدم که چیه مو دیگه اینی مشکل داره که وقت تا سو چیگه دیگه تیفیلم از دیست رفت.
A UN report presented at the Human Rights Council in Geneva criticized the Taliban over their abhorrent treatment of women and girls. The UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Afghanistan, Richard Bennett, found that the Taliban's treatment of women and girls may amount to gender persecution, a crime against humanity.
The Taliban's intentional and calculated policy is to repudiate the human rights of women and girls and to erase them from public life. It may amount to the international crime of gender persecution, for which the authorities can be held accountable.
The United Nations has also warned that a Taliban administration crackdown on women's rights is likely to lead to a drop in aid and development funding in the country. The United Nations has made its single largest country aid appeal ever, asking for $4.6 billion in 2023 to deliver help in Afghanistan, where 2/3 of the population, some 28 million people, require it for survival. However, the Taliban's bans on women accessing their basic rights has severely hampered aid efforts. It seems that what progress had been made for Afghan women over the last decades has been virtually washed away. While the country suffers at the hands of the Taliban and their ineffective policies and governance, it is the Afghan women who continue to bear the biggest burden.